The P.Eng process has changed from what it used to be, and candidates will now be expected to complete the competency-based assessment, the CBA, before the ethics exam. We have seen a significant increase in the number of engineers requesting for help with preparations to become professionally registered in Canada or help with securing engineering jobs in Canada. For people not yet in Canada, there are loads of reasons to explore moving to Canada. Many engineers in the UK and in different parts of the world are considering Canada. And Canada is one destination where engineers can grow their professional careers. Now, each province provides the professional engineer status to practice engineering in their jurisdiction for the people who have engineering degrees and have fulfilled certain requirements. Just so you know, you can get an engineering job in Canada without becoming professionally registered. In several cases I've seen, after getting permanent residency status in Canada, candidates have applied for an engineering job and have actually gotten the role before they traveled to Canada. Some candidates had chartered engineering status in the UK, and in the end, it was actually their professional competency that was considered before they got the job in Canada. However, it is important to have the P.Eng status if you must perform the role of an engineer in Canada. The flowchart below represents the P.Eng process in 4 phases. We've got the readiness check, complete the application requirements, submit the P.Eng license application, assessment, and finally the NPPE. The first step of this process is determining if you are ready to apply on the PEO website. If you already have a P.Eng with another regulator or you were licensed in the past, this is not the application process for you. You are expected to have 4 years experience and you're expected to have completed your CBA prior to starting your application. Now, before now, you could apply right after you left school, and maybe even some candidates have already applied and they haven't gotten 4 years of experience. It is worthwhile knowing that your internship can count towards the year's experience. Once you determine that you are ready to apply, you will be expected to complete the application requirements, which involves providing an academic record, the experience requirement, identification, good character assessment. So we have an example of a candidate that had professional engineering qualification in the UK. So that candidate was a chartered engineer with over 10 years experience in the engineering profession. And that candidate was actually given a waiver. So it meant that the candidate actually met the academic and experience qualification. So the candidate was not required to write any exam. For the experience requirement, there is a minimum of 48 months work experience required. And as part of the competency-based assessment, there are 34 competencies across 7 categories, and all that must be demonstrated. The PEO website has an applicant guide that walks you through each competence. We highly recommend that you review the guide. After completing the CBA, you would be expected to perform a self-assessment and then get a validator to check what you have written. A PEO assessor would also review your work, and afterwards a decision will be made on your CBA. As you complete your CBA, for each competency, a work example must be provided, and it is split into situation, action statement, and outcome. When completing the CBA, you are required to write the situation, action statement, and the outcome using the pronoun I. Even if you were part of the team, do not just say we, because the assessors need to know exactly what you did. So it's important to use I when explaining your experiences. Now, one of the biggest hurdles is that you are space limited. PEO limits you to 300 characters on the situation, 1,650 characters on the action taken section, and 300 characters for the outcome. So the CBA measures competence to determine whether you have gained enough knowledge through your work to earn a license. Useful questions to ask yourself as you write each competency include: what project was it? What was the challenge or business need? What was my role in the project? What exactly did I do? What exactly was my contribution? How did I do it? What were the outcomes? What difference did it make to the business? Focus on innovation, doing things that haven't been done before, or doing things in a new way, using new methods or technology. Do not forget staff responsibilities. So that includes contractor support and also budgetary responsibility and control. So state the figures. The thing to note is if you are making a statement and you think the assessors might be thinking, and so what? And why do you think this is evidence of the behaviors or demonstrated competency of the P.Eng? Then perhaps your statement or block of evidence needs a bit more work. So make sure that your report is very clear. Your report must be succinct and focus on why you think your evidence is worthy of a P.Eng. You need to give your application your best shot the very first time. You don't want the assessors coming back to you asking for supplementary information. Tighten all loose ends. Do not just knock on the door. You need to kick it open. Wow the assessors and make your submission stand out. We have provided a few action words that you can use as you write your CBA. So examples include expanded, fabricated, formulated, guided, sold, solved, stabilized, stretched. So later on in this course, we would actually provide an example, a detailed example of a completed CBA from start to finish. So you can use that to guide you as you prepare your CBA. But I'll go through one of an example. So this is under category 1.4, And let's look at an example of how to write this situation. Now remember, this is character limited, so make sure that you cross-check the number of characters that you are using. So let's look at this one. Whilst working as the lead design engineer at the supersonic power plant, I developed a new data logging system for the turbine control system. The existing data logging system was obsolete and unsustainable. In addition, the data printing system was slow and there was frequent occurrence of paper jams leading to significant downtime. So this sets the tone. It tells us exactly what the situation was. It tells us what project the candidate was working on, what exactly was the challenge to be overcome. Now we look at actions taken to solve that challenge. I designed and implemented a new data logging system using LabVIEW and incorporated a functionality to log the turbine data onto log files in dedicated computers, allowing users to format the data before sending it for printing. I also provided specifications for a replacement printing system. The new data logging system included a graphical user interface that displayed different controls and indications used to simulate turbine run-up to synchronization to the grid. The system also allowed for a simulation of deloading and a turbine trip and logging the data to a file on a computer. I incorporated a mechanism that allowed testing the EHG control system when the unit is on a maintenance outage, and so eliminates the need for a functional generator for that purpose. Okay, after doing all that work, what was the outcome? The new system has eliminated downtime related to maintenance of the previous system. So this example has gone through a complete cycle of the situation, action taken, and the outcome. Each competency has a list of indicators. Use the indicators to guide your work example choices. An example is provided below for competency 1.3. You can use the same example for multiple competencies, but you must write about them each time. So this is important because you want all your competencies to be stand alone. This is especially important when you have different validators. Some validators might not have the time to read through the whole report. So it's important that you provide context for each competence. So make sure everything is stand alone. Each competency has a different rating that you must meet. For instance, competency 2.1, which is demonstrate effective verbal communication skills when interacting with team members, clients, contractors, and the public, has a minimum rating of 1, which is very low on the scale of what is required to pass. You are expected to pass the overall as well. The self-assessment involves you assigning yourself a score. Then your validators will assign you a score for all the competencies, and then there will be an actual evaluator in the PEO that will assign you final scores, and they will actually take everything into account. You can have multiple validators. they should have their P.Eng and they should be familiar with your work. The validators are expected to have their P.Eng for the period that they are evaluating. You do not need to have directly worked for the validator. So the ideal scenario is that your validator is also your line manager. However, this is not always feasible, especially if they do not have a P.Eng. Now, the validator should be familiar enough with the work that you have performed so that they can rate you. And please note that the closer your work is, to your validator, and the closer that the relationship is that you have with your validator, the stronger will be your application. So for instance, if your validator is your line manager, it's a lot stronger than if your validator is someone who is maybe two levels removed from your line manager. So the PEO does take into account that consideration. So we recommend that you send your full report to each of your validators prior to submitting it to the PEO. And this is important because you want your validators to have the opportunity to provide you with feedback. It is also a chance for your validators to say what they think about your report. For instance, if they think that you are over embellishing something, or if they are not familiar with a portion of your report, they can actually provide feedback. Also, ensure that you are aligned with your validator regarding the scoring threshold. This is very important. If your validator scores you below the threshold, your application can actually be deferred. So if there's disparity between what you think you are rated and what your validator actually rates you, so it's important that you have an alignment with your validator before you send it to the PEO to avoid your application being deferred. So they do tend to be strict about having P.Eng validators for the competencies 1.1 to 1.10 if the experience was in Canada. So if it's a Canadian experience, it is better to have a P.Eng validator. For the international experience, so if you had your experience from abroad, they can actually accept a senior practitioner, which is someone who asserts having an engineering degree or a senior level experience. So I have seen many examples of where some candidates have some experience from abroad, for instance, from the UK, and the validator was someone who was a chartered engineer. So that's like an equivalent of a professional engineer in Canada. The next step will be to submit your CBA along with your academic experience, your good character assessment, and your identification. Your application will be reviewed for completeness within 10 days of submitting. If there is something wrong, they will contact you. And if there is nothing wrong with your application, they wouldn't contact you. Now, if your application is incomplete, you would have 60 days to have one redemption attempt. Okay, make sure that your application is complete before submitting. There is a law where the PEO has to provide you with feedback within 6 months. Once your CBAs have been reviewed and they have been accepted, you would have to take the National Professional Practice Exam. This exam may be completed after the PEO confirms your application is complete. It consists of 110 multiple choice questions. You have 3 attempts to write within your window of 180 days. Now, for the examination process itself, you need a working microphone and webcam. Your laptop should suffice. So most laptops have got a microphone and webcam, so you do not need an external microphone or an external webcam. However, some proctors can be specific about the angle of the laptop screen, so you would have to lean in a certain way. It might be uncomfortable and it might make you feel awkward. They do this to make sure that you're not hiding anything or you are not trying to cheat. So make sure you comply with the directions you are given. Now, do not use any wireless connection in terms of maybe your mouse or other components. Just make sure you're using your laptop. Simple. Now, sit yourself with your back to the door so they can actually see the door and they are happy that no one is coming in during your exam. Okay. Make sure that your room is adequately heated or cooled because time flies very fast when you are uncomfortable. So make sure you are okay. The NPPE is broken down into different sections. It is a 2.5-hour long closed book online exam. So there is the professionalism portion having between 7 to 10 questions, the ethics having between 17 to 21 questions, professional practice between 27 and 32 questions, law for professional practice between 23 and 28 questions, professional law between 7 and 10 questions, regulation of members and discipline processes between 7 and 10 questions. So, like I said earlier, 2.5 hours to complete the exam, 110 multiple choice questions, 3 attempts to write, but you have to write them within the set time frame. So it's a proctored exam, like we said, closed book. There are several exams conducted within a year, about 5, but please confirm. Now, whilst going through a bank of questions and answers can help, you stand the greatest chance of passing this exam when you have read the recommended material and you fully understand the NPPE mindset, which we would see later on in this course. The exams are very lengthy and in many cases will contain irrelevant information aimed at directing you away from the right choices. So practice reading very quickly and most importantly, understand the NPPE mindset. So we have prepared an NPPE exam mindset list that would help you prepare for the exam. Okay. And I would say for the exams, you have 2 major tasks. So one of them is to understand the concepts, and the second is to understand the mindset. The NPPE has provided a resource that you can use. So there is a bank of questions and answers that you can purchase online. It is a good idea if you want to test yourself to see how prepared you are for the exam. In addition, there are a few books you can study to help you prepare for the MPPE exam. Once you have satisfied all the requirements for licensing, the registrar will review and give approval for the P.Eng license to be granted. After the P.Eng licensing and annual fees are paid and processed, the applicant is licensed as a professional engineer. Once you get the P.Eng, you must maintain it by completing professional development in different categories and reporting them to the professional body every year. If you fail to maintain or report the required professional development hours, your P.Eng status could be revoked and you will no longer have the engineering license to practice engineering. Please refer to the PEO website for useful links on how to become a professional engineer, the CBA guide, and also the outline for the ethics exam. Thank you very much, and do not hesitate to contact us if you require help with becoming a P.Eng, and would like to use this opportunity to wish you the very best in your professional engineering career. Goodbye and see you soon.